Hey everybody, today I am out dodging raindrops in Washington because I have been finally able to get hands-on with the updated Ford Mustang Mach E. Here it is, and today we're going to talk about the entire Mach E lineup, including this all-new rally trim. This is the most off-road version of the Mach E available yet, but I'll be honest with you, it's not an electric Bronco. It is still an electric Mach E. And with the Mustang logo on the front, as you might expect, it doesn't have gobs of ground clearance. It's about an inch more than the regular model, bringing this up to about where the last generation RAV4 was in terms of its ground clearance. But the changes for this generation of Mach E are actually a little bit more important than just the ground clearance, because we get new batteries, we get new electric motors, we get updated headlights, and of course we get this rally trim. Before I get carried away, maybe we should actually get back to the front though and talk about what this looks like. All models are now going to get the updated projector headlights. Previously we had some reflector headlights in the lower end trims. All models are going to get this look here, and I will go ahead and turn on the turn signal so you can see what that looks like, because Ford really does love the progressive turn signal design that was seen in, for instance, the regular Mustang for a while. It's a really attractive look. Now, making this a little bit more unique for the rally trim, we get an updated spoiler down here at the bottom, the lip I should say, on the front bumper, and importantly we get these big rally lights. I really love this rally light look. It was the first thing that drew my attention when I first saw this out at Goodwood when they had announced this, and even in person, again, out here on the road, I just love that look, and I kind of wish that you could get those lights on more of the different trims of Mach E. Again, we get about an 0.8 of an inch ground clearance increase. Still have the black trim there over the wheel wells. The white wheels are definitely a distinctive feature of the Rally Edition, but they're not exactly my cup of tea. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section. They give me distinctive 1980s vibes, which is not necessarily what I want to think of when I'm thinking of new electric car. The tires, they're an interesting choice. So if you come around here, Travis, and just take a look at that tread pattern, these are Michelin Cross Climate tires, which are 3-peak mountain snowflake rated all-weather tires. I was actually a little bit surprised by that. I was expecting maybe something like a Geolander tire, kind of like we find in some of the more off-roady versions of the Subaru lineup, but instead they went in a very different direction with the Mach E Rally. The other change, of course, is back here. We get this absolutely massive wing on the back with these really interesting, big, sturdy crossbars right there on top. Otherwise, it's just mounted to the side of the hatch. If I could get a Rally without the wing, I think I would do that, but the wing doesn't bother me at all. We also get, of course, the graphic decals here with the stripes running across there. And if you come over to the side, we get the progressive turn signals in the back as well. Versus something like the Blazer and the Equinox, which I was actually recently driving in very different weather. Sorry, I hit that button twice so it didn't want to open. We get a pretty large cargo area that's smaller than the one in the Blazer in terms of real-world dimensions, also not quite as high. And that's because they really wanted to give the Mach E this very aggressive, aerodynamic, and more Mustang-like haunch here, where we have a pretty wide bell shape to the body and then a pretty raked hatch in the back. That does reduce cargo practicality. But if we go back up front, we find something that you don't find in the General Motors EVs, and that is an actual cargo area in the front. This is a front trunk, of course. And under here, we find the exact same storage capacity that we had before, because there's no heat pump in the Mach E for this model year. That's the one thing I would love for them to have included, and they chose not to. Logically, it gives us a larger cargo area. Also, logically, it reduces costs. Now, interestingly, the Lightning does get a heat pump for this model year, so keep that in mind if you're cross-shopping this against a lot of the competition. Now let's talk about what makes the Mach E go. Starting out with the charger over here, we have a CCS connector, because the J3400 standard is not going to be native on this until perhaps next year or so. The Ford adapter is compatible with the Mach E, and you can already run out and charge your Mach E if you have one of those adapters at a Tesla supercharger station. That's probably the biggest news really for the Mach E, one that Ford has really been leaning into pretty heavily. This is the first vehicle and the first brand that can charge at Tesla supercharger stations around the United States. It's about 2/3 of those stations that are available, but it is a huge deal as far as getting a non-Tesla product into pretty decent adoption in the United States. This is going to be a lot easier to charge at those more reliable stations. Now, what actually moves it down the road? Well, there are two different battery packs. The base battery pack is different versus the last Mach E that I drove. It's now an LFP battery, about 70 kilowatt hours in capacity, skateboard style underneath the vehicle. That is a less expensive chemistry that also allows you to completely charge the battery on a more regular basis without worrying about battery lifetime. The NMC battery that we find in this model, this is the bigger battery, about 91 kilowatt hours of total capacity. This one, they would prefer that you didn't charge it above about 80% on a regular basis. So depending on exactly how much range you need and where you're trying to go, etc., that should inform your decision. The base version, yes, its range is going to be lower than this, but if you charge it to 100%, it's actually not going to be too far off an 80% charge in this bigger battery. It's actually about the capacity difference really between the two batteries. All models are going to get a new rear electric motor that is more powerful than before. It's actually based off of some of the motor designs used in the Ford Lightning, and that's how this gets 20 to 30 more miles of range in the real world versus the outgoing Mach E. They've also made some additional battery cooling improvements and some charging improvements as well. So the bigger battery is going to charge faster than before, although it's worth noting that the standard range battery is not going to charge as quickly as the very first Mach Es that used the different standard range battery. However, I will say though, the LFP battery was absolutely the right way to go. Not only did it help reduce costs in the Mach E, this is less expensive than a lot of folks had really thought it would be in 2024, it also means that that entire range is usable. If you're talking about a vehicle with a 230, 240 mile range and an NMC battery, say something like a Genesis GV70 or GV60, not a competitor to this really, and you only charge its battery to 80%, you're gonna get a lot fewer miles than the standard range version of this, charged all the way to 100 on a regular basis, which Ford says is actually okay for the LFP battery. Now, if you want the Mach E GT or the Mach E Rally, you'll get 480 horsepower, 700 pound-feet of torque maximum. But there's a bit of a change in the GT lineup. The GT does not get quite as much oomph by default, but you can add that either at the point of purchase or later via an over-the-air update. So that's kind of a cool touch. You can actually update all the performance, 3.3 to 3.4 seconds, simply by downloading that particular update. The other thing to know is that the pricing has been realigned versus previous. And since it is raining and I'm currently melting away into the gutters, I'm just gonna refer to my notes here. The standard range model, that's gonna be the lowest range with the new electric motor in the back, $39,995. The model that I had, which was the premium extended range all-wheel drive dual motor, that's $49,995. Reasonable bump, $10,000 over that base model, but you get a lot of equipment. You also get the bigger battery pack, more performance, all-wheel drive, etc. The minimum point of entry for all-wheel drive is $43,495. But what's more interesting on the pricing ladder actually for me is the Rally Edition and the GT. The GT is basically $54,000. This is $59,995, so $60,000 essentially. I honestly think that's a pretty good deal. This one does have a few options, the paint color, etc., that will bump that price tag up a little bit, but compared to the competition, Ford has been really aggressive at keeping prices nice and low. We don't have the heat pump, but we do have a big interior. Now, versus some of the General Motors competition, most notably, I would say probably the Blazer, pricing I think is right in line. This also has a track record. Blazer has had some, let's just say, interesting software issues since it launched. This has not had those same kind of issues. It actually has been pretty solid. Blue Cruise is not as good as Super Cruise. I'll just be real honest there. I have driven it a ton. I have owned vehicles with Blue Cruise. Super Cruise is just the superior system. But here we get more usable headroom in the back than we find in something like the Equinox. It is significantly more fun to drive. Even without talking about this updated refreshed model, the rear-wheel drive nature, simply a lot more fun, and this is significantly lighter. Ford also has really great range figures, and they've been really, really aggressive at not just giving us good on-paper range figures, but also real-world range figures. When I had a Mach E, that model was rated for just under 300 miles, and it routinely beat Tesla Model Ys that you, our viewers, brought in for testing. We did that a total of 4 times. People brought their Model Ys in. We had them fully charged, rested overnight, turned them on, drove 300 miles. Without a doubt, every single time, the less efficient Mach E actually beat the Model Y. It's not too surprising. It has a big, big battery pack. 91 kilowatt hours in this model, And that means you simply have more power available to go further. And part of the reason for that, in a way, is the tire size. The Mach E doesn't have terribly wide tires. So if you are looking for something that has the best handling in this segment, you might want to look elsewhere. But I think the Mach E really comes across as a solid alternative. Let's take a quick look around the interior. I'll just go ahead and grab the camera from Travis, wave at everybody there. He is staying nice and dry under that umbrella. And this interior, it's basically the same as the Mach E has been, with a few changes for the Rally. So if we look at the seats, you'll see that we have the Rally logo right there, kind of a stormtrooper-y vibe with the white accents on the back of that seat. This is the same seat that we're going to find in the GT trim, of course, just with those minor tweaks for the Rally. In the middle of the seats, we have kind of a geometric pattern and those white dots that go through that geometric perforation, but the seats are still not ventilated. I think that is one big missing thing, since we see ventilated seats in so many different Fords. The door panels and the dashboard, that's basically the same, although we get some differentiating geometric trim right there on those door panels. Regular air vents, so you don't have to worry about fiddling with them in a screen. Now, speaking of the screen, this does support full screen Apple CarPlay, as you can see right there, but it doesn't support the narrower mode that we used to see in the previous generation Mach E software. This software has been continually revised, so one thing that's worth noting is if I go over here to Unbridled, we don't have the same sort of limitations in the software that we found in the GT when it first came out. So the sort of prison bars is what people called them, where it locked out performance after 0 to 60 run for 5 seconds. We don't see that anymore. We have upgraded cooling on the motors and on the battery pack, etc. And in this Rally model, we have the new Rally Sport option, which basically gives us maximum performance, limits some of the nannies in this car to give you the ultimate in sideways performance out in a rally course. We'll talk about that in the full video, so be sure and stay tuned. Still have a Qi wireless charging mat down there, the rotary shifter, lots of storage all the way around the car, and then of course the same steering wheel we had before, except that we have the white accents down there on the bottom of the steering wheel. I also really appreciate the fact that we have a real instrument cluster above there. You can see this poor car is getting pretty wet out here in the rain. And we also have real headlight control, something that we don't find in a lot of the GM EVs. One thing worth noting is they have not changed the passenger seat. So while the seat bottom cushion on the driver's side adjusts for tilt, we don't have that same functionality over there on the passenger side. Looking in the back, same door handles back there. Well, lack of door handles. We just have the button. Then you grab the metal on the side of the car. And then back here in the rear, we have a reasonable amount of legroom, and this model does not have a glass roof. And that's kind of a cool touch, I actually think, because Ford has not had the steel roof available in the upper end trims before, but now we have more availability of the steel roof. You could do that in the GT, you can also do that in the Rally, and then there were the base models as well. So as always, be sure and sound off down there in the comments section below, and stay tuned because the full video is going to be dropping soon. What do you think of the updated Mach E and of course this Rally trim? Do you think this is the best spiritual successor that Ford has ever created to something like the Focus RS? I actually get kind of supersized Focus RS vibes with this Mach E Rally. I actually think that's a really good thing. Or do you think Ford has gone maybe in slightly the wrong direction? Should they have focused more on pricing, affordability, maybe efficiency? I think that this is just about the perfect Mach E, however.